Hello friends, I'd like to begin today with a brief overview of this blog, its purpose, and its content. Some 10 weeks ago, I began looking at answers to questions that I believed people trying to cope with the chaos going on all around us might have. I'd like to assure you that I have no desire to make money from this channel. So when I ask you to share and subscribe each week, it's only that I hope to reach more and more people only you might know. And so in sharing these messages, you become helpers in this endeavor, helping others to find good news in a world of chaos. If this might be your first visit to this channel, I'd like to share with you the questions that we've looked at so far. Is anyone in control? Where can I go to get answers about God that is reliable and trustworthy? My story, is there a way to deal with personal chaos? If God is in control, why is there so much evil in the world? And that's a three-part answer, 3 rebellions. What was God's solution to these 3 rebellions? Where do religions come from? And why should we trust Christianity over other religions? How do I find peace in this world of chaos? And last week, do heaven and hell exist? Today, we're going to begin a 3-week series looking at what the Bible has to say about, first of all, angels, secondly, demons, and lastly, spiritual warfare, and how this fits into what's happening in our world today. You see, there is so much most people don't know about the spiritual realm, the place where God's spiritual family reside. As we looked at in week 4 of our teaching messages, if God's in control, why is there so much evil in our world? We saw that God created 2 families. First, his spiritual family, then his human family. Hence the terms human beings and spiritual beings, of which angels are a part. So in this presentation, we'll be looking at members of the heavenly host who are by nature unembodied spirit beings. Their normal domain is the spiritual world. They were present with God before the creation of the world and human beings. One question you might have is, are the members of the heavenly host eternal? And the answer is no. There's only one spirit being who is eternal, having no beginning and no end, never described as being created, whose existence preceded creation. Psalm 90 verse 2 tells us, before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. All other Elohim were created by the lone, uncreated God of the Bible. Let's consider for a moment that if we desire to know what the members of the heavenly host are like, we should consider ourselves analogous. Psalm chapter 8 verse 5 says that God has made us a little lower than the heavenly beings, or the Elohim. Yet God shared his attributes with us as he did with them, as he created us in his image. So what are members of the heavenly host like? Well, they're like God and like us. Think about these attributes that we share with our Creator: intelligence, creativity, emotions, rationality, and volition. Our fellow imagers, the members of the heavenly host, have them as well, because they are also his imagers. Our embodiment naturally means that we live with significant limitations that unembodied, intelligent beings don't. Because of what happened in Eden, our lifespans are severely curtailed. We die after a brief existence in the world God made for us. It's only at that point that we experience the presence of God, presuming that we are part of His family through redemptive grace. We are thus far less intelligent, creative, and wise than the members of the spiritual world. We simply do not know what they have learned through access to God and lifespans of many eons. But what they are and know is part of our own destiny in Christ. They even have the attribute of free will, which we see some of them choose to exercise in revolt to God. However, according to God's word, there are still thousands who remain loyal. So now let's consider these spiritual beings by name and purpose, which include angels, cherubim, seraphim, and archangels. First of all, it's important to note that the terms angel, cherubim, and seraphim are not interchangeable. They are, in effect, job descriptions performed by different spirit beings. In biblical literature, cherubim and seraphim are never sent to people to deliver messages. That task belongs to angels, hence they're messengers. Cherubim and seraphim are heavenly throne guardians, a role that at times brings them into contact with humans, but they are not sent to earth to instruct people. We have also seen that whenever angels encounter humans in their messaging role, they appear in human form. In the Old Testament, their appearance makes them indistinguishable from men. It's only when they do something unearthly that their transcendent nature becomes apparent. The only visible exceptions in this pattern are found in the New Testament, where members of the heavenly host appear to people along with luminous glory. Like in Luke chapter 2, verse 9, an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. Or as we see in Matthew 28, verse 2, his appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. Opposite to popular belief, angels are never described as having inhuman features such as wings, or multiple faces like cherubim and seraphim are, which helps us conclude that angels, those divine beings sent to earth to interact with people, look like people and do not have wings and are always referred to as male, although as spirit beings they are genderless. The flesh they assume when they assume visible form or flesh to interact with human beings is gendered male because it is flesh. When it comes to affecting the material world, we can see that they assume material form and act upon material objects. The two angels in Genesis chapter 19, verse 11 that visited Lot, for instance, were able to strike the men of Sodom, both young and old, with blindness. They were the cause of that effect. An angel somehow freed Peter from his shackles as they opened an iron gate without touching it. Acts 12, verse 10 says they passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. And then we see that they struck Herod with a disease in Acts chapter 12, verse 23. Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, an angel of the Lord struck him down. Now we also see that angels moved the stone from the tomb of Jesus in Matthew 28, verse 2. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. Now I'd like to take a few minutes to look at those that we might consider important angels. First, the angel of Yahweh, or the angel of the Lord. In the Old Testament, this is the most well-known angel and is actually Yahweh himself in the visible form of a man. Listen to this section from Exodus 23, verses 20 to 22. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land, and I will wipe out your enemies. When God describes for Moses the angel that he is sending before the people to guide them to the promised land as having his name in him, he is telling Moses that his very presence is within this angel. The angel is the visible form of Yahweh himself. Later in Judges chapter 2, verse 1, we hear this: Angel of Yahweh, report that he, note the first person language, accomplished his mission. It says, now the angel of the Lord said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. There are many other passages that validate this proposition. Exodus 13, verse 5 and verse 11, Leviticus chapter 25, verse 38, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 10 to 11, chapter 7, verse 1, chapter 9, verse 4, chapter 11, verse 23, Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 28, as well as in Genesis chapter 1, verse 11 to 13, when Jacob sees him standing in Bethel in the house of the Lord. Second, we see the commander of Yahweh's army. He is another significant member of the heavenly host. His army, who appeared to Joshua on the cusp of a conquest, found in Joshua chapter 5, verse 13 to 15. And when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, Are you for us or for our enemies? Neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, What message does the Lord have for his servant? The commander of the Lord's army replied, Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Following along with that reference to take off your sandals off your feet, for the place you are standing is holy, we are taken back to another passage and the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3, verse 5. It's important to note that the angel of Yahweh was in the burning bush passage. We see Stephen make reference to this truth in Acts chapter 7, verses 30 and 31, where he notes that an angel appeared to Moses in the bush, and the voice of the Lord emerged from it. We also note that several passages in the Old Testament described as end-time conflicts involving the army of the holy ones, unleashing the wrath of God on both his earthly and heavenly enemies. We see that in Isaiah chapter 24, verses 21 to 23, chapter 34, verses 1 to 4, and Zechariah chapter 14, verses 1 to 5. We can actually find in sections of the Qumran scrolls that God's army during this time consists of a multitude of holy ones and hosts of angels in heaven, and the elect ones of the holy nation on earth. Both groups are to be mustered for the battle. This picture is also present in other Second Temple literary works, such as 2 Maccabees. Third, we look at archangels. Gabriel and Michael are best discussed together, since their appearances are in the same chapters of the book of Daniel, chapters 8 through 12. Along with these two are unidentified Prince of the Host, who also appears. Gabriel and Michael are the lone angels mentioned by name in the Bible. They are well known as archangels. You see this term used of Michael in the New Testament in Jude, verse 9. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not dare to bring a slanderous accusation against him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." You can also find examples of archangels in the book of 1 Enoch as over-angels, and that they seem to be busily in charge of maintaining created order, plotting out times and seasons, and praising the Most High. For New Testament authors, angelos is a catch-all term for the supernatural agents who faithfully attend God. Again, we only see 2 angels named, Michael and Gabriel. There's not a lot of emphasis given in the New Testament to archangels, except in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16. It says, "For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God," as they proclaim the return of Christ through this angel, although the angel is not named. There's a very important passage found in Ephesians and Colossians where Paul refers to the supernatural beings appointed by God over the nations as rulers, thrones, dominions, and authorities, hostile to God. We're going to look more closely at this passage when we delve into week 3 of this study dealing with spiritual warfare. There is so much more that I could share with you relating to angels. However, I would suggest that if you want to know more, you can go to a wonderful book entitled Angels, written by Dr. Michael HEISER. Much of what I've shared today actually came from this writing. If I can leave you with one important truth from this teaching, it is that there are a variety of spiritual beings created by God, his first family, who will one day we will be a part of. Matter of fact, Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 3, that we will actually judge angels. We, as sons of God, through Christ, will join with the sons of God who already serve God in his divine counsel. Imagine that. I hope you will join me again next week when we will turn our focus to the question, what do we know about demons? Please share this video and subscribe to my channel. God bless.